The English 211 Experiential Learning course allows students to, it's a creative writing course that allows students to pursue their own creative work, so poetry and fiction, and interestingly enough, they get to go to Discovery School and teach 4th and 5th graders creative writing, poetry, and fiction. So it's a chance for them to get out into the community and use a lot of the skills they're learning in their own work to teach creative writing. We also have an after-school program at Discovery Elementary School. And that program targets the most at-risk, academically speaking, students at Discovery School. We also have Creative Cloud, which is a library-based outreach program in creative writing. And we work with youth ages 8 to 18 in that program from the St. Cloud area and as far away as Becker. And beyond that, we have a fledgling program for future clinicians, CSB-SJU students who are interested in going to med school or PA school or dental school, who get a chance to work with, right now we have them working with dialysis patients, teaching creative writing. There's a lot of evidence out there that these types of programs have great health outcomes, and of course, for our students, CSB-SJU students, it gives them a chance to have a clinical interaction where they get to see patients as fully human and not just as patients. So that's something we're pretty excited about, and we're working toward maybe a class dedicated to just future clinicians and creative writing. Additionally, I don't want to miss anything here. Additionally, this year we started an Americorps program in the English department. It was the first year to get an Americorps members. We ended up with one member, Kit Chambers, who we'll talk to in just a second. And that was our attempt to really have students help build capacity around these programs. And so Kit worked very closely with the library program and the after-school program in particular, and build capacity there. And now I'm going to stop talking at you and begin the conversation with Kit. So I'm just going to ask a general question first. What drew you initially to this type of work?
I love creative writing, and I love kids, and I love teaching it to kids. I have a lot of little cousins, and we were always writing plays together and doing little skits. So I took a creative writing class with Mark Conway here, and one of my best friends, Eddie Hanlon, and I were taught about this 826 Valencia program. Well, what the 826 Valencia program is it's a program where kids ages 6 to 18 get a chance to write poetry and fiction and tutor, and it's an after-school thing, and so it's been really helping all the communities. It's all over in Chicago, Ann Arbor, Detroit, like Washington, D.C., and they even have a national program. So what they do is they really just engage kids in the literary arts, and I love poetry. I love expressing myself through words, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if we could start one here in St. Cloud? So Eddie and I went and visited, each of us, a 826 program. He went to Chicago, and I went to Seattle, and we were able to see what they were doing. He actually purchased like a lesson plan book from them, and so we used some of their lesson plans, and early on realized it wasn't exactly what we were doing. But there are a few downsides, because every 826 program has a store attached to it. So they have a front, like a pirate store out front that sells like novelty pirate items, and in the back is the tutoring center. So we don't have the facilities, we didn't have the budget or anything. So we looked at kind of community centers already where people were, and the library was an obvious choice. So when I went in and started looking at their calendars and looking what they had a lot of movie clubs. They had a lot of things with like early developmental, toddler time. They have a bunch of stuff with like the little kids, and they didn't have enough writing, or very little writing. They had a lot of book clubs, but there wasn't a lot of creative writing stuff. So I came in with this huge presentation. It was like 15 minutes long, and I had a PowerPoint, and I came in and I was like, I want to start a creative writing program. And they're like, okay, when can you start? And I was like, but I have a whole presentation. So, but they've been great. Stacy and Lisa, just amazing, helping us out. Next week is our last week, and they're providing cupcakes for us, and they just really love it. They get nothing but great reviews about this from the students, the parents. We've even had grandparents come and say, this is amazing, we love what you're doing. So it's been a great journey.
Great, thank you. One of the things that has struck me about these programs is that it's appealed to kids, a graduating senior. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
About to be done. And Sammy, you were in my FOS class last year.
Yes.
And so you were first year last year. I came to the class and said, we've got these opportunities. It was just getting off the ground. What appealed to you about it as a first year? And then how did it affect your first year experience?
Well, being a first-year elementary education major, I had talked to you and you were explaining to me how experience was almost just as important as getting good grades, and I was looking for a place to get that kind of experience. And I also have an endorsement in English, teaching middle school English, so kids and writing. It was just like the perfect fit.
Okay. And now, Melissa, you're a first year this year.
Yes.
And you were in my 122 course. And so, first of all, what drew you to this type of work? And then I'd like you to speak a little bit, too, about next year, how you envision, because you're going to be an Americorps member for us next year.
High school service was a really big component for me of my high school career, and it just became something that was really, really important to me, and I wanted to continue that in college and kind of do something on my own and get really involved in that. And I've always liked kids, and I would make my own little books. I would sew ribbon through them and do stuff. So getting the opportunity to work with kids and creative writing, which is something that as I've gotten older I've become less comfortable with and not very sure of myself, it was a really good way for me to both have a service component and be with kids, and then also grow in something that I'm interested in. And as far as next year, I've learned to love Creative Cloud and all the programs so much. I have so much fun with it, and seeing all the kids and this amazing stuff that they come up with every week is just so fulfilling, and being able to continue with that and see it grow is really great.
Caitlin, you, of course, are in English 211 currently, which next year will be English 214, just for all of you prospective students out there. Could you talk a little bit about, I know when you came into the creative writing course, you said you hadn't had a ton of experience with creative writing, and you were a little nervous about that. Could you talk about how maybe working in the classroom helped you with that, or taught you some skills?
Yeah, I am a senior political science major, so this is my first college English class besides FYS. And I kind of had the expectation when I signed up for it, the title is Writing Well, that I'd be learning about grammar and language. So I was utterly surprised when I found out more that was about poetry and creative writing. But once I've heard about the aspect about service learning, I knew I was hooked. I knew that I wanted to stay in the course. I have very little experience in teaching, let alone writing my own creative writing. So it was great to have the hands-on experience of going back to the fundamentals of creative writing and then discussing that with the children. You learn again. So it was really great as a senior to have my English, I guess, improve in creative writing, but also have that aspect of service learning and paying back to the community. So.
And I know just sitting outside of the classroom, I always eavesdrop. Even when they think I'm not listening to their teaching, I am always listening to their teaching. And, and I'll actually ask you the next question here. You guys very quickly picked up on the fact that the students in the classroom were clustered in 3 different groups. And as teachers, you keyed in on that, and you just worked with these groups individually, and you sort of, you met this this need they had to have some more individualized attention. Could you just talk about some of the decisions you made in the classroom?
Sure. Well, the first time that we went and taught, it was a bit overwhelming. The students were pretty loud, not really attentive when we had transitions, and both of me and my 2 partners realized that it was best to split them up into groups. And I feel like that experience not only taught us how to read an audience, which will help us later in life, but also how to use our voices as tools of keeping people's attention. So it was really, not only did we learn, to break them up into groups, and the students then were able to have a more personal experience with us, which was really beneficial to us as tutors, but also it taught us how to control a classroom, which I'm sure I'll use later.
Great. All right, and I'll just open this up to any of you. So were there things you learned about teaching? I mean, the sort of, maybe something, you ran afoul of something and you had to change something between lessons or maybe between sessions. What were those lessons, and how'd you deal with those situations?
Basically, weekly at Creative Cloud, we do a different lesson plan, and it depends on the group. Sometimes we get 3 students, sometimes we get 11 students. So it really depends. And we were doing this activity about 2 weeks ago where students would go around and we'd be like, okay, now like everyone wrote a metaphor poem by themselves. Please go around and share. And it was every other kid was sharing. There was one kid sharing and the other one's like, I don't want to share. No, thank you. And the other kid was like, yeah, please, like, let me share. And we were thinking like, I'm like, how do we counteract this? And one of the tutors is like, why don't we, like, let's try small groups. Let's put them in groups of 3. And once we did that, it opened all of them up. The kids who were literally covering their paper, didn't even want to share with the tutors what was going on, were all of a sudden willing to share not only with their small group, but with their full class. And that was all improv. We had no idea going in, like, we should do small groups for the metaphor things. We had to wait it out and see, and then small groups was it. It's what clicked.
Well, and that's a big part of learning to teach, right? Is learning to read and react in the classroom. So that's great. How about the rest of you?
Kit and I just last week at Creative Cloud were doing poems of place, and we had one activity where you're supposed to write about, I think it was your hometown or your favorite place, and the kids were just sitting there like, I've never seen them so contemplative. Usually they go right into it and are writing all this great stuff down, and all of them are just really stumped about what to write about their hometown, and we just kind of improvised and tried to make it something that they were all excited about, because each of them had something a little bit different that wasn't necessarily their hometown or their most familiar place that they really wanted to write about. And at the end of the day, getting them writing about something that they love is more important than sticking exactly to that lesson plan that you've written.
Sure. As far as improv goes, you never know what the kids are gonna say. Like, we get some of the craziest stories just come up, and like for me, like for my future, learning how to react to those things, like whether it's like something uncomfortable or like violence related, just like knowing what the appropriate response is. Kit's really good at thinking on her feet with those. So
I disguise my faces pretty well.
So yeah.
Well, and it should be said that part of reading reacting is evident in the structure of Creative Cloud now, the library-based program, because you start every session with a series of rules, really expectations, really that allow you guys to rein in students if, say, they're not being positive. If they're, what are the others? It's be positive.
Be respectful. I can talk on the microphone. Be respectful. Be positive. Be helpful. Be creative, and have fun. That's kind of what I run through every time. And if it's an older group, I still touch, like returning students, I still touch on all of them. I'm like, these are important. Remember these. You're familiar with these. And if I see a few new students who maybe seem unsure, I'm like, welcome them in by kind of introducing, like, we all do this. Like, everyone knows these. These are rules we can all live by, and it's civilized here. It's a safe space to be creative.
And what stands out to me about that, about you including those, and we talked about those after the first session of Creative Cloud, there was a minor incident where a student booed another student, and it was just a situation where a
very young kid not knowing how to respond.
7-year-old didn't know how to respond and booed, and so Kit and I talked about how to prevent that from ever happening again, and your suggestion was to add a few of these expectations, and it's really nice to see for me that it's that type of thinking, preventing it, giving yourself something to point to, because it's going to happen with kids. Kids are going to make mistakes when you put them in a room together, but to have a way to talk about it positively with them was something I was looking for, and it's nice to see these things developing.
And even it helps them, like during the lesson, like if they're doing something that's borderline inappropriate, you don't want to embarrass them, you don't want to call them out on it, you just say, everyone remember the rules, be respectful of one another's ideas, be respectful of each other. You just kind of bring them right back to it. And it's a nice way because it like lets the person know, like maybe this isn't something you should be doing without telling them no and without telling them embarrassing them in front of the group.
All right, so shifting gears just a little bit, what would you folks say to a student who was sort of on the fence as far as participating in English 211 or in the Creative Cloud program or the after school program or any of our programs? What would you say?
I know for me, as far as English 211 and being English 214 next year, like I said, creative writing has not really been one of my strong suits in the past, and just being able to work with kids and, like you said, going back to the basics is so helpful, and you really get an appreciation for the whole thing. And as far as Creative Cloud, just being unsure if it is a big time dedication, but it's so rewarding, and it's a great start to my Saturday. Like, it's a lot of fun, and all the work that you put into it, you see come right back out in the results with the kids and with yourself.
Right. And then kind of going off of that, when I find myself talking about this class, I find myself boasting about how much fun I have after teaching. Not only do I feel afterwards that, hey, I've actually done something today on my Friday, but I feel like I'm giving back to the community, which is a type of feeling that many people, I feel like within St. Ben St. John's, really appreciate and like to give back. So many friends of mine that are on the fence, I tell them, not only are you given this great opportunity to have a liberal arts degree for poli-sci majors, sign up, but you're also given an opportunity to give back. And with Creative Cloud, I went one time, and I really appreciated all the hard work that Kit in the English department has put in. It's really well done, so good job.
Oh, thanks. For like recruitment strategies too, one thing I always do is I like to talk about the students who come to Creative Cloud. We have this one girl who comes every week, and all she writes about is squirrels, and it is the best poetry I have ever read in my life. I tend to, when I'm going into schools, like I did a lot of recruitment at different high schools in the area, middle elementary schools, what have you, and when I went to see the high schoolers, I went in and I'd read this poem, and it's this beautiful poem about a squirrel, and all of a sudden I'm like, the girl who wrote that was 8 years old. If an 8-year-old can do it, you can write poems this amazing too. I'd be like, you guys, you can do this, you can have a voice, you can write about squirrels, and it is amazing, It's like something, it'll change your life. And so I just kind of draw them in by being like, we have this community of writers that's growing and developing a voice, and you have a chance to be a part of that.
Which actually leads directly into my next question. So in my mind, what we're doing here with all of these programs is, we're not only reaching out to the community, but we're actually creating a community of writers on campus. And I realize that there'll be different levels of commitment to creative writing, personally. But is that building? In my mind, it's happening. Do you see evidence of that?
I think I do. I definitely think it's something that more people are aware of. I remember I consider myself basically concentrated in literature and creative writing classes, mainly in my English major, because you can basically pick what you want to do. And there's people who generally, you have to take writing essays as an English major, and that's, but other than that, you don't really necessarily have to take a creative writing course. And it's been a vast improvement of seniors now realizing, wow, I really like this. I really wish, I would have done more of that. And the English department is developing and changing to match those expectations, because I think there's a craving for it. I think people want it.
Just kind of tying into our 211 class too, if you look around at the majors within it, you have an English, history, I believe accounting, me as poli-sci, and then a sprinkle of English majors. And I think it's really great to see not only is this evident within English majors who really are passionate about creative writing, but you have accounting majors who can write this beautiful poem, and honestly, you would never have guessed it. And so I think if this program were to continue, you would draw people from other majors other than English. So it would be an opportunity for someone to express their creative side.
Yeah, I know when Creative Cloud first started out, we had 2 biology and a chemistry majors, because it was all basically my friends and just people coming in who were pre-med, who were all these different science backgrounds, who were able to just, the art to them was in the writing. They didn't maybe understand, it wasn't painting or drawing. It was this is the art that they appreciated and they loved, and it was something they wanted to keep working with. And it is the literary arts. That's one thing I always try to emphasize. It's this is art, this is something beautiful.
So obviously, without using names, you know that. Could you relate a story about something that's happened during your volunteer work and something that's changed your understanding what it means to be a citizen student? I mean, what it means to be an actively engaged student in your community.
I can share. One of my favorite times was when this boy came in for his first time, and he comes in warning us, "So I'm not very good at this, like I don't really get it, whatever." And then we work with him for the day. We like encourage what he's saying and like support his ideas and everything. And he walks out at the end saying, "Gee, now I don't know if I want to be a writer or be a zookeeper." And we're just like, well, there you go. So it just like shows that like if they don't have this exposure to it, they're not sure what they can all do. And when we open them up to these opportunities, it just shows that like we make a difference, and I think it's rewarding, like you said, overall the whole experience.
I think my favorite thing just happened this past weekend. We had some kids who had come early and were just sitting around at the tables, and there was a girl who was talking about a story she had written the last time, and she like has this whole huge story, like she's gonna make it into a chapter book and all her friends at school know about it, and she just like talks about it all the time. And I think to have that kind of impact where your students and the kids that you're reaching out to are effectively advertising the program for you because they love it so much, and just being able to see that kind of reaction from the kids and get that, it's really satisfying.
I think it's good. Okay. Well, my favorite experience was actually the second time that I went to go teach at Discovery. We were in our small groups, you know, and it was very personal, and we were just talking. And then all of a sudden it switched into, wait a second, you go to college? And I was like, yes, I go to college. I'm a senior. And I noticed a lot of the kids opened up immediately about their hopes and dreams about going to college. And it was really touching to not only see your effects in creative writing, but also to have those kids share with you. So one of the girls turns to me and she goes, "You bigger kids make me want to continue on and become a vet." And I just took all my strength to be like, oh. And so I took the rest of the hour to just keep egging her with more like motivation. I was like, "You can do it. I'll be back. Let's keep going." And it's really inspiring, and that story warms my heart every time I think of it.
For me, my favorite part about like Creative Cloud and the students that come, and even Discovery and the Discovery After School program, is I always try to emphasize like this is a place where, you know, spelling doesn't matter and you don't get grades. Because I remember being like a little kid, being really dyslexic, afraid to read in front of the class. I couldn't spell anything. I thought I was a terrible writer. But then I, you know, started doing this, and there's kids, like I can see, you know, the same thing. Like I can see they struggle with spelling and they think they can't do it. But it's like, be creative. That's what this is about. It's about, you know, creative writing. It's about your voice. It's about what you want to say. Like, we'll help you. We're not going to grade you. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to, you know, we'll help you with your grammar. You just need to ask. And with poetry, you get away with that more because it's more free from grammar, so you don't have to, you know, it's all image based. You don't need to have a complete sentence, and it's in those moments where the kids really understand and it really clicks. All of them, they just open up and they're excited.
I was going to say, it's like very important that we emphasize that it's not school, because like every week I'm still shocked that kids are here on a Saturday, like they're one day off of school to write with us. And it just kind of shows that like even if they don't always cover these kinds of things in school, like if they're steering more towards essays and things that they can use there, it's nice that they get an opportunity to work on their free writing. It's just a great concept for them to explore, I think.
So, you know, programs like this, I mean, I've got plenty of ideas here, but why is it important for CSB-SJU students, administration, you know, departments? Why is it important to support this type of work? I mean, what seems really important about it to you?
Well, I think it just brings the community together too. Like, I think it's about community. It's about coming together. It's about art. It's about, you know, loving what you do and being passionate about it. And it's a chance to have a voice. Everyone has a voice, and a lot of people hide their voices and are afraid of them, and because they maybe are afraid of, you know, failure or messing up. And it's something that a lot of students just, you know, it's that moment they open up, they relax, and they're like, it brings them together because they're able to read and share and learn and understand and grow.
And I love this idea, when you bring up voice, I love this idea of college students, community members, kids finding voice simultaneously. I mean, think about how powerful of a space that could be. Yeah, that's great. Other ideas? Anything come to mind?
I think for me, just being able to draw different types of people from within the St. Ben St. John's community and then bring that out to kids at the library or at Discovery, because every tutor brings something completely different to the experience for the kids. And some tutors will click more with some kids, and sometimes the personalities just don't work out. But being able to have all these different people come together and really provide the best experience for the kids, I think, is why it's so important that the whole community is involved in it somehow.
And to touch upon that, I noticed that not only am I experiencing or in my classes learning about certain issues affecting the world and our nation, but then when you have this community program, you see what is going on within your own community. And speaking with specifically with our teacher, I noticed there was a large vast of children within this fourth grade class that I taught at that English was their second language. And so this opportunity to go and teach not only exposed me to issues within my own community, but also gave me a helping hand, a way to help out. So it was great.
And I think it's about, like, you brought up English as a second language, and we had a student just last week who raised her hand kind of shyly, and she's like, well, I'm, 1/8 Cherokee. Can I have some Cherokee language in my poetry? And I was like, absolutely, every time. Like, teach us about this. Let us know. It's like a combination. It's her voice. She's 1/8 Cherokee. 1/8 of her poem is 1/8 Cherokee. Like, it was just adorable. And it's about that. It's about, like, everyone has a different way of looking at, a lake or something, but we all understand what a lake is, and it's our own way of interpreting it, no matter what language.
So, and I've asked maybe a variation of this question already, but what skills have you pulled out of working in these programs, or, yeah?
The biggest thing I've learned by far is not to overcomplicate things, and that sometimes, I've said it before, you just have to go back to the basics. And like, I remember, I think it was my first week working with Creative Cloud, we were doing images or metaphors, and we had like a set number of images we wanted to include, and we went over the 5 senses, and we didn't have a lot of kids that time, so the tutors got a chance to write with the kids, and I was thinking I was doing the exercise the same way the kids would be, and it was a lot of fun, and it was really easy. It wasn't painstaking writing, and it was really great to have that freedom, and I hope that's what the kids get out of it when we are there for them and teaching them. So that's the biggest thing I've learned. Just, it doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to put stuff down there on the paper, and it works out.
For me, I've personally enjoyed, just with the experience, learning what developmental stages these kids are at and what they're capable of doing when you give them a task, and how different ages are going to interpret different things, or even just kids of different ability levels. It's been really good. I think it will benefit me very much in the future, working with these kids.
Well, and just looking at your Scholarship and Creativity Day project yesterday,
yes.
I was thinking about you targeting advanced students. I mean, it's an 8th grade geometry lesson plan, and I wondered in the back of my mind if seeing kids, because of course we have some really high achieving kids who participate, had any effect there.
Yeah, because I had a class on development, obviously, but you can read about it, but then you can see it for itself, and it just helps you make a better connection. And definitely at Creative Cloud, I think we see a lot of high achieving kids because they came there, they want to write, and so it's given me a lot of good perspective, definitely.
Okay, and then I touched on before that some of the tools I'll take away is being able to read the audience, understanding cues, maybe even movements that individuals portray that let you know they're not interested, so you need to change your tactic to keep them interested. So that's one, is reading the audience. Another one is, again, is to reiterate what you said, is to be concise in your directions. If you do not explain things to the point without fluff, they'll do it normally, and it's very fun. But if you have confusing directions, it only produces confusion. So the best is to be concise.
Yeah, and going off that, like, I learned to repeat things. I used to just say, like, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 and then I'd have them go, and now I'm just like, this is what we're going to do. All right, this is what we're going to do. Okay, ready, go. Because some people, they hear it once and they start writing, and some kids are still, they're trying to understand it. But the main thing I've learned is to be persuasive in my, because I did a lot of recruitment. I went to over 200 classrooms here, recruiting tutors and recruiting students from ages, I went to anywhere from third grade classrooms to senior classrooms in high school, and just trying to convince people that this is something worthwhile, worth their time, and it's something that they should, try to be in. And it was hard because I used to, I was more afraid of it when I started out, but now I could go in and be like, you want to do this, you want to come and like have fun with us and all this stuff. And it's been a challenge, but it's helped. We have a lot of students now, so.
The day I realized you were on board well before this, but when you said, I spent 8 hours yesterday at Cathedral.
I did.
Yeah.
I spent 8 hours.
So, of course, you guys are fully invested in these programs, but nothing worth doing comes without struggle. So, what were some of the things you maybe struggled with with your volunteer?
Woof, I just have to name one. No, there have been moments where it's been, I explain something and it makes perfect sense to me. I'm totally following through, and then all of a sudden I say it and they have no idea what I just said. And part of that was, now I start repeating it. Now I break it down, and now I understand the students more too. So I know which student's going to understand and start writing and do what I want to do, and I know which students I need to go and visit with a little afterwards to make sure we're on the same page. Because students tend to vary a little bit in the activities, and since it's creative writing, you can let it slide. Because if kids like, what if I'm writing about my favorite place but it's made up? I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, as long as you're writing about a place and you're using imagery and metaphor, like I'm trying to, the place doesn't really matter that you're writing about. I want to be their diving board. I want to be their jumping off point into, their ideas. Like, I'll say something and that'll be, the board that they're thinking of, and they get some traction and they get the skills, and then they do whatever dive they want to.
I think one of the hardest things to deal with was recognizing differences in kids, and then transitioning from Creative Cloud to the After School Discovery Program, just because it's a completely different set of kids. And with the Saturday program, you get kids who want to be there and they want to write, and they show up for that, and that's not necessarily always the case at Discovery. And just being able to tweak what you've done before to get these kids as excited about it as the kids who come to Creative Cloud. It's a little rough and it's frustrating, but being able to make that transition and still have a great outcome is, again, really rewarding.
And just to follow up on what you were saying, of course, the transition being everyone who shows up at the library is choosing to be there. And I mean, you mentioned this, but and everyone in the Discovery After School program is there because they've fallen behind academically. And so there's, it's definitely a different group of kids. Yeah.
Yeah, and to compensate for that transition, we ended up using a lot more pictures instead of, we would read poems and we'd have it out, and we'd normally have the students read the poems back to us so they could process it more, and it ended up being where some students physically kind of knew what it was but didn't honestly know how to read some of the words or anything that we thought were simple and appropriate for their age group. So we were just like, all right, well, we'd have pictures then. And it was, as soon as we started having the pictures, they're like, oh, can I draw it and just write the words underneath? And it was like, absolutely. If that's the way you're learning to understand this, absolutely. Because imagery is about pictures, and we emphasized it, and that's what got through to them. Imagery is pictures in your writing, is what they would always say. So it worked.
I can just go off of that. Definitely accommodating the different learning styles, because these kids all have their different strengths and weaknesses. We want to make sure we pick up on all those things. But I think our lessons are overall very well organized, and they touch on all those aspects. So.
So, and I'll pose this to Kit, but I want to hear your responses too. So one of my goals is to build in peer mentorship into this program so that we have, so the torch is constantly being passed from year to year, and so this community grows, and that it grows more from the grassroots. I mean, I'll be here to make sure these things keep going, but I want students to be getting students involved. So could you talk about the importance of that, maybe any examples you've seen?
Yeah, sure. As far as peer mentoring goes, I like to think of us as a little team, like a sports team or something, and I'm the captain, and we're all doing the same thing, but like I'm just there to help. I don't want to be almost Mother Hen-ish. I kind of am sometimes, but I just like being there, and I like, if I want the tutors to be able to text me and be like, hey, I have a lot of homework, or hey, one girl's like, I fell on my face last night and I have a cut, I don't want to come. I'm like, okay, you don't have to come, but I want that they want to be there. They're sad when they can't make it. They're sad when their schedules work out or don't work out. I want Creative Cloud to be a place they want to be in. I want it to be with people they want to be with. None of the tutors at Creative Cloud, none of us dislike each other. We all want to be there with each other. We are a team. We do care about each other. And that's what mentoring's about, is you want to be there when they have questions. And I am so open for feedback too. People come up to me and they're like, I don't think the student's understanding what's going on. I'm like, okay, why not? What can we do? And they have ideas and they're thinking about it. It's something in their mind. And so same with the captain analogy, it only makes sense for when I graduate for someone else to step in and take up that role, and when they graduate for it to go on for forever.
And I'll expand this a little bit too. So part of it is the mentorship, and part of it is just peer-to-peer engagement, like making sure that you guys are engaging your peers rather than it always coming from a faculty member of the administration. So have you seen examples of that, or how important is any of this?
Well, just with kind of what you're saying about how we are a team, and Kit makes it seem like we're all working together, which I really enjoy, and it's been great just getting to know everybody. We bond over things that the kids say, and it's always a good time when we're there, and I just think it's she sets a great example, and so.
I obviously heard first about Creative Cloud from Chris's class last semester, but then I remember Kate came into my FYS, and she did exactly what she said. She talked about the girl who writes poems about squirrels every time, and just seeing another student so excited about it made me want to do the same thing. And I know I boast about Creative Cloud and how much fun we have, and I talk to all my friends about this great program that I volunteer with on Saturdays, and being able to be with people my own age and us all having this common goal and wanting the same thing for these kids that we're reaching out to is a really great experience to have, and that kind of atmosphere I think works really well for us.
Yeah. Another thing I found really important too is the fact that we all carpool together. Most of us have cars, most of us all this stuff, but I make a point to be like, hey, I'm leaving at 12:15. Everyone ride with me. I have 5 seats in my car, and and it's just that where we really, on the way over, we talk. It can be anywhere. St. Cloud, from 10 minutes to half an hour drive. So it's in those 10 minutes that we talk about the lesson plan. We talk about our weekends. We bond with each other. We become friends. So we go in there as a united front. We're not, working against each other. We're not trying to compete for things in teaching them. We're not trying to compete for kids' attention. And we spread ourselves out evenly between them the entire lesson. We're constantly moving around, checking in, and it's it's not rare for, a student to talk to 4 or 5 tutors in a 15-minute experience, just because we're like, what are you writing about? Because every tutor is a different backboard, and every tutor offers a different experience, maybe a new question for the kid writing that they hadn't seen before.
I remember one week we had a kid in Creative Cloud who it wasn't clicking for them, and every single one of the tutors went over and tried to push them in a different way to get their creative juices flowing, and finally someone clicked with them and it worked. But you really do have to have that kind of team mentality that everyone has different strengths and different weaknesses, and to make sure that you make good use of all of those within your group that you're teaching with, and so you can get the best results out of the kids.
So for those students in the CSB-SJU community who are thinking, wow, this sounds great, but I don't have any experience with kids, and I don't know the first thing about kids, or I don't know the first thing about creative writing, what would you say to them?
Well, I always just remind them about our volunteer training session. I always tell people, we'll never let you go in cold. We will never let you be like, you have to write a lesson plan and teach this group of 8-year-olds. Like, we'd never do that. We always want to be like, okay, we're doing volunteer training sessions. We'll run you through worst case scenarios, anything that could possibly happen. And like, we'll run over the lesson plans with you. I'll try to get it to you a few days in advance so you become comfortable with it. And then once we get there, if they're like, I always offer, if you guys want to teach for a lesson, like, please do. Like, please take, I like activity 4, I want to teach it. Like, I always offer that. But if someone's comfortable and uncomfortable and never wants to do that, then they don't have to. We'll never pressure them into being in front of, a classroom teaching for the first time. We all sit around a table for most of I like to teach sitting at eye level with a lot of the students sometimes if we're just running over basic activities and we already got the, lesson out of the way, because it's an equalizer being at eye level with them. That's why when I tell tutors, I'm like, don't hover over them, like squat down, get on their level, help them know that you're there peer to peer with them. You're eye to eye right now.
And I think as far as experience goes, people forget how open kids are. Like, when I go there, it's not like, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do. The kids will come to you and they'll talk to you, and they're so open to share. You'll get a life story out of them, I swear. But there's no need to have a ton of experience. As long as you know the basics of working with kids, I think anybody could really benefit from and succeed with Creative Cloud.
And a lot of the students who come on a week-to-week basis love when we bring new tutors in. I know Caitlin came one week, and they're like, oh, who's this new girl that's coming to hang out with us? Like, oh, who's Caitlin? So they were all really excited about having a new person and a new voice, even, because that week we did haiku no rengas, which are community poems. And we had a group of about 7 students, and there were about 6 tutors. And I was like, well, the tutors are writing this time too. So we all took turns writing a little verse. And I didn't have anyone write their names on it for the purpose of, it's a group poem, it's a group work. We can't, your voice, and some of us, if we're familiar with your voice, we'll be able to pick it out. But you can't tell the difference between an 8-year-old's writing and a 22-year-old's writing in these haiku no rengas, because we all learned it together.
And Kit gets a special award for having to sit through, 10, 15 trainings over the last?
10.
Yeah. Maybe it just felt like 15. So, all right, give me your vision for a successful year next year, and we'll start with Melissa. What does success look like in year 3 next year, do you think?
I think one of the biggest things we can do is just getting a group of really dedicated people who are always going to be there for Creative Cloud and always going to be excited for it. It's really great to have a lot of people who volunteer, but the most important thing, I think, is having those consistent people who are really dedicated to it. Because I know going into Creative Cloud, all of the kids know Kit, and they it's great to see that and that kind of consistency, and I think it's really helpful for the kids. So having that kind of consistency out of the tutors who go and them really wanting to be there, I think that will help Creative Cloud and the Discovery programs kind of take off on their own.
Yes, it's hard to imagine Creative Cloud without Kit. Oh my goodness, she started this whole thing, and it's been so great. But along with gathering tutors, it's very important that we keep getting more and more kids to come. I know you've recruited through a lot of schools, and I think the best way is though when kids have a great time and they tell their friends. Like you were saying, they share what they're doing on the weekends with their friends in school, and just get more kids involved. I'd love to see the program keep growing and growing.
I think that kind of the kids advertising it for us to the rest of their friends, I think that's so great. And last week we had a girl who was talking about how they're doing creative writing in her class right now, and she would talk about Creative Cloud with her class when they were doing creative writing. I was like, you should keep doing that. That's really great. Tell everyone, tell all your friends on the playground about Creative Cloud and bring them all with you.
Even though I'm not going to be here next year, I think it'd be great to see Creative Cloud go into more schools. Discovery after school, there was literally a change from week 1 to, I think we did 5 or 6 weeks there. There was such a change, and we only had 6 students, and they were, you know, they became comfortable with us. They were actually writing at the end instead of drawing. They were so like ready to it, and I would like to see, like, you know, to have that after school. Maybe we only do 4 weeks, maybe we only do a month, but maybe you go to like different elementary schools and do that 4-week program, and just to see those students, and then they'll start coming, they'll tell their friends, and then they will come to Creative Cloud because they're like, hey, I know these tutors. Oh, they're also at the library on Saturdays? Well, that's really cool. Like, that's really neat. And they'll bring their friends. So it's just, that's more elementary schools, I think, would be a great place to start too.
All right, so I will ask, I'll make one comment, and then I'll ask a sort of final question. So today we had, you know, 4 bright, great young women, but for all the St. John's students out there, it should be said that English 211, we had 8 males and 4 females the first semester. I think I have 7 males. We have a huge male presence too.
Just not today.
Yeah, just not today. There were too many conflicts with people's schedules, and that's been something that I wondered about and worried about, because I think particularly for some of the students, some of the at-risk kids we are trying to reach. Sometimes there's an absent father figure, and it's really important, I think, to have males involved, and also to confirm to these young boys we're working with that this is an option for you too, and there are these role models out there, and we've gotten that. So I think that's been great, and we've had that in Creative Cloud too.
Yes, absolutely. One of our main tutors who comes as much as he possibly can, his name is, can I say his name is Steve? His name is Steve, and he has been so great. He ends up in more poems than the rest of us. I mean, granted, kids write about what's around them, and so all of us end up in a poem or a short story at some point. I was a were-monkey once. But Stephen ends in every kid who's ever come, Stephen ends up in their poem, because he'll get down. He really cares for these students, and he really cares that they're understanding and they're learning. So he'll take extra time, you know, he'll talk slowly, he'll reach to them. Especially, we have definitely a stronger presence of women as tutors and even as students. Collectively, we have more women, but we do have like boys who are consistently coming and consistently just like loving it. This one boy told me last week, he's like, I can't wait till my little brother's old enough to come to Creative Cloud. His brother's a toddler, like walking around, and I was like, yay, exciting. So it's just been like nothing but great. It's fairly even though, and especially in Discovery, it was even across the board, basically male, female. So it was good.
Yeah, I think boys definitely bring an alternative perspective. That one week when Eddie came with us and we were giving an example through the story of Cinderella, and we didn't take into account that some students wouldn't be as familiar with the story or that the boys wouldn't be as interested, and he gave the same example using the Roadrunner, and so that really got more kids engaged, just like bringing up those other points. So very valuable.
That's great. Okay, so final question, and maybe I've asked a variation on this already, but so looking back in 10 years, what do you think you'll say about this program? What kind of, how big of the pie of your college experience do you think this will be?
Creative Cloud pretty much sums up my college experience, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's what I've committed my last 2 years now to, is I work every weekend, every Saturday at the library. I talk about it nonstop. All my friends are like, what are you doing? Like, you want to hang out this weekend? I'm like, nope, Creative Cloud, got stuff to do, like busy during the day. It's one thing that it's consumed me. I'm so passionate about it. I'm having a hard time like disconnecting myself. I'm sure if I look back in a year, 10 years, 20 years, I'll just cry thinking about it because I'm so happy about it. It's mainly the most rewarding thing for me, though, it has to be the students. It has to be the smiling faces that come every week that share their beautiful language, their beautiful poems and chapter books. We have a boy who always writes chapter books. With us, and just sharing, you know, because they have so much to share, and sometimes I feel like students feel neglected, like their voice isn't being heard, and I want to hear it. I want to hear it as much as they'll talk. So it's just been wonderful, and I'll be sad to graduate and leave it, but it's in good hands, really good hands. So
Yeah, I'm definitely going to appreciate the lesson plans we've come up with, but more importantly, what the students have responded with those lessons. Like you said, those ones that come every week, just like talking about squirrels all the time, or that one boy always uses these metaphors that are like struck like lightning, and like you can just hear their voice coming through, and I just think that's so special.
I hope to look back on Creative Cloud and all of this and see it as a huge part of my college experience. I really want it to be a defining thing, just because I mean, even in 1 year, my first year at college, not really knowing what I'm getting myself into with college itself, and then adding on this whole new experience with Creative Cloud and creative writing has been so great for me, just personally, getting integrated and finding my spot, and like Kate keeps saying, finding your voice. Like you're doing that for the kids, but you do it for yourself too. And I hope to look back and have it just be something that I always associate with my college experience, rather than a little addition to it. Oh, I did this too. No, it was a huge part of what I did in college.
Well, thank you for participating in this. I'll just say, to sort of end this, so one of the great things about working with kids is that their faces do light up and they do get excited, and you can see their progress. Perhaps one of the sort of drawbacks of working with kids is they're never going to turn to you and explain to you how you changed their life. Right, that may happen 20 years down the road, but it's not going to happen then. Whereas college students tell me that all the time. Point being, though, that these kids with whom you're working, I mean, you're doing an irrevocable good. I mean, you're doing something that can't be undone by all of the negative things in their life. Whatever happens to them, whatever they go on and accomplish or don't accomplish, this will be something that advances them forward, that even if they get pulled back, they will have advanced that far. They cannot be taken away. So I just want to make that clear to you, because, well, you may or may not have thought about it that way, but I encourage you to continue to think about it that way. And just one special public shout out to Kit for having sort of created Creative Cloud, and been the inaugural Americorps member. I think this is a program that's going to continue to grow. So thank you, and thank you all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we couldn't have done without you, Chris. Honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I started out, I had this idea, I had what I thought was a lesson plan, and it really wasn't. And I met with Chris, I think it was the day before our first Creative Cloud, and I was so I know what I'm doing. I didn't. And so I went there, and Chris came, and I was just he gave me all these pointers and all these tips, and he's like, maybe think about it this way. And then going from working together with Creative Cloud to then being your student in class, and now your intern and working with Americorps, it has been just amazing, and I love it, and thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thanks.